Welcome to this week's edition of the CEO Show, FinTech Consultancy's attempt to determine what the leaders in our country were thinking during the COVID-19 curfew and after now. I have with me today the pleasure of speaking to Mr. Chinthaka Abeykoon. He is the Director of ICT, Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Lanka.
Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you very much for inviting.
Well, you're looking very relaxed, so I'm guessing that things have maybe calmed down just a tad since the big crisis hit our country and the rest of the world. Are you feeling like you're gaining that momentum again and things have hit a normalcy, would you say, somewhat?
Of course, how I would like to see it is I'm always at the positive outset, so we are looking things positively. Always, because all the bad things happen in the world and happen personally, always have a positive side to it also. So thinking of negatives won't get you anywhere. So looking positive is the way to go forward anyway. So we are hopefully looking at a brighter future. Things might be different, definitely.
Yeah.
With the new norms and all that. But then we are all fingers crossed and hoping things will go merry again.
Most definitely. Let's rewind back to COVID-19 hit, the pandemic was announced, and every country in the world was getting ready for what they really didn't know what it was going to look like, but they knew they had to take extreme measures to ensure that the lives of their citizens were safeguarded. Can you share with me, first instance, what measures were taken by Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority? What was your first line of thought, and what were your leaders looking at doing? What needed to be done?
Sure. See, now, if you look at personal lives, the general community in Sri Lanka, that's basically looked after by the health sector. Essentially, that's the health sector of the government who looked after and set guidelines and guided us to how to survive and what to do, what not to do during this pandemic season. So being a citizen in the country, so we had to follow exactly what the guidelines set out by the health authorities, government health sector, likewise. Now, we being in the tourism sector, our responsibility towards the community essentially were towards the tourists who are in the country at that point in time, who got stuck here, and also the community who was serving these tourists in the country. So our responsibility and our basically what we had to look after was that part. So what we did was that we exactly followed the guidelines set out by the health authorities and also the defense, because part of it was controlled very well by the defense. And we followed those guidelines and transferred them back into these tourists and the industry segment who were serving these tourists. And in that context, also what we did was that we established a 24/7 help center. So any tourist, anybody who has got into trouble or, seek any assistance, we had this help center going on. And also we had a hotline number 1912. So it was always manned by, initially by the industry as well. Apart from the regulatory body, it was, we shake hands with the industry people. So they also sat in the center helping out tourists then and there, because you could imagine what they go through. Because now when you go to a country, you don't expect to, definitely you don't expect pandemic to come through and you get stuck there. So you're essentially with limited amount of cash, and then you have various other issues like the local communities don't like tourists being around, because assuming that the reason for pandemic is the tourists. So things like that are also there. So we had to look after all those aspects, and then how they live on, how they provide themselves. Some of them are individuals, some of them are backpackers, some of them are families. So this is where we came in and we helped them out, and so likewise.
Right. You feel that coordinating the various
Yes, more or less coordinating, and then intermediary role we played. Like now, for example, some of these people got stuck far away from Colombo, and they wanted to travel to Colombo. Some of them wanted to go back to their countries immediately. Some of them were asked to leave their accommodation because of the community pressure. So so we had to fit them in where they can go on for a while.
right,
And if somebody was desperate to go back to their country, then we had to arrange their passes to come to the airport, and then to take their flight, how to take their flight, and so likewise what safety measures they have to do. And I'm sure you may be aware that now immediately when it started, a lot of people were looking for masks, sanitizers. Within a very short period of time, it ran out of the market initially. Now it's available, but initially it ran. So we had to provide them to them through government sources and various other sources. We had to provide them, of course, free of charge. We had to provide those facilities to them, and then educate them on, there's language barrier. Cash was an issue. So wherever possible, we played a coordinating role and an intermediary role to talk to these industry stakeholders who are providing accommodation, and the tourists to also to be in par with health regulations which were made at that time.
right, right. Did you feel that communicating with different individuals around the country was challenged in terms of digitization and having that infrastructure in place? Do you feel that it was adequate? Did it help that you had taken that step to digitize the majority of Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority? Did it help at all that you were mobile in that way?
Yes, very much. Because, see, I am a person in the technology sector. So for me, sometimes I look at it as a positive and an advantage and a opportunistic way to emphasize and make use of technology, where otherwise it would have been relatively underused, I would say. Although it was available, perfect example is Google Meet. We never used Google Meet before this pandemic. We never used, right? To be honest with you, we never used. Although we had them, we of course, we being a Google customer, we never used. We already had it, but then we never used it.
Right.
But then during this time, we used it effectively and very extensively to conduct our meetings, contact people, to various discussions, all that. We use that plus various other platforms, of course, available in the world. Almost all the platforms become very, very evident and being used. And so a lot of people, including my relatives who are like generations ahead, with whom I never thought that they will be on these platforms and talking to me and all that through that. But then they also got used to that and all that. In terms of industry, what we did was that we conducted almost all our board meetings using online platforms to video platforms, so various platforms, mind you. But we use them effectively to conduct various board meetings because certain things required financial clearance, approvals. So all that had to go through to serve the industry at that point in time. So we never got disturbed in terms of that. And then reaching out communities who are a little far away also, I must say that service provider in terms of telco service providers also played a vital role. Having said that, Sri Lanka was anyway, I think, relatively geared in current 2020 context. 4G was available almost right throughout the country, so the connectivity was relatively easy and streamless. And also the quality of the video and the quality of the audio was relatively higher than some time back. So I would say that we were quite thoroughly using technology to get connected and get our things going. and also to connect with these distant communities and communicate if something needs to be done and all that. So we did that not only using these video conferencing methods, also using social media and our internet website, essentially web presence. So on the authority side, anyway, our regulatory part was online.
Right.
So, but a challenging issue that we had so far was that although it was available online, people used to come to the office because people are used to this walk in and carry the documents and things like that. So during this time, nobody could do that. So then anyway, they had to come on board online and submit documents online, make payments online, and have the faith on that. And so that also was a positive and technology in that context had helped us and of course helped the entire country and also I think entire world so to
Sure.
continue things as they were.
Yeah, give a sense of normalcy, even though it wasn't. Can you, now this is purely your perspective, not basing anything on statistics or projections that have been made officially. How severely, how dramatic do you think the impact was on tourism in Sri Lanka?
Well, see, you would have heard these numbers many times before, but I have, and because many people speak about it. But nevertheless, to put context into our discussion and this particular conversation, let me just reiterate. Sri Lanka in I'll skip 2020 and 2019 because both of these years were relatively bad for tourism because of the unfortunate incidents that we had. So our benchmark is 2018, 2020, 2018. So our, I think GDP was around $89 billion. And out of that, about 5%, close to 4.98 to be exact, 5% contribution was directly from tourism sector.
Right.
Tourism sector was directly employing about 500,000 employees in the country, in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
So this is direct. Indirect, it could be over probably even 2-3 million, right? Employment. So we were having roughly into 2018, these are public statistics in our website and all that. So we had about 2.3 million tourists coming into the country out of 1.4 billion around the world. So it's a very minute amount, but then for Sri Lanka, it matters.
Relatively speaking.
So, yeah, people might wonder now, tourism is one of the ways that these kind of pandemics and viruses come into the country. People might wonder, like being in the normal society, I might also wonder why we harp on tourism again and again, right? But then we have to understand the fact that we are an island nation, and there are limited things that we can do. We are not a big nation, so we are a small country, so there are limited things that we can do. We are with a deficit economy, so which means that whatever the way that whatever the legalized way of bringing in foreign currency to the country matters. So tourism being the third largest contributor to the Sri Lankan economy is one of the ways out for us during any time. So whether we like it or not, this is one of our strong areas because being an island nation, we've been visited by various parties from the long gone history, including parties who were trying to conquer us. So being exposed to that, we are, naturally we are a community who would say that's why I think people say that our hospitality is very high. We don't even let somebody go out of our house if somebody visits our house without having something, at least a glass of water. We consider it to be a bad thing if they go out without having something.
Yeah.
So it's naturally in us, I think, being an island nation and all that has gone into our culture. So tourism is one of the major areas that we got to emphasize on and we got to capitalize on in terms of developing this country economically.
Right.
Right. So in that aspect, so tourism still matters. And how we have approached this is that now the government announced that by August the airports will be open and then we will allow tourists to come in. but of course, with a lot of precautionary methods that has gone into that. And so I would say, is my personal opinion, I would say that we have twofold responsibility. One being that we got to look after the tourists who are going to come to the country. So we got to ensure that the tourist who's going to come into the country without COVID goes out also without COVID.
Right.
And then secondary, our responsibility towards the primary responsibility is towards the nation, so that we got to ensure that our nation is not affected. So we got to ensure that nobody brings in COVID from outside. And so we got to ensure who's coming in is properly tested and all that. So we have actually already laid out the guidelines and all that. It's already available in our web. So how we are going to do that is we conduct about 3 tests at 3 points in time, that the tourist arrival, after a while and after a while, so that ensuring that he's not carrying the disease. And then we have given very thorough guidelines, if you go through, to all these service providers in the industry to follow, so that they don't contaminate this pure tourist who's going to come. So
Right.
that they follow that exactly. I think we are in a perfect scenario. Somebody will come in without the virus, will go out also without the virus, so that country is also assured. All that is there. So that's the positive sentiment. But having said that, so probably recovery, it will take some time, because to hit the numbers, it will take some time. You know, unless it's for essential travel, I would reckon that nobody would want to travel at this point in time or at this juncture, unless it's essential. So, and also the cost structure of now somebody to come into Sri Lanka has also gone up. So, relatively, we were highest in the region even before. So,
Right.
our fees were relatively, embargo fees and all that were relatively, that was a discussion that we were in before this, all these pandemics and 2019 unfortunate events, because we were actually, if you are developing tourism in the country, the fee structures have to come down. They got to spend on things that they experience, but not on the essential fees. But then with these tests going into play and these service provider having to adapt to various rigid, I would call, other mechanisms. So providing services, those costs have gone up. So because of that, for a tourist to come and spend time here, the fee structure had gone up. So, so considering all those facts, to hit the numbers, it will take some time. But we are very positive, because everybody is interested in Sri Lanka. Even in, I think even in May, we got inquiries to come to Sri Lanka in July. So
Wow.
yeah.
No, I saw a video on the internet, and I can't remember who hosted it, but it was a phenomenal video about Sri Lanka and our hospitality, and how even during COVID, how we just reached out to those who didn't have a place to stay, and it just portrayed Sri Lanka as being such an island paradise, literally, even in the midst of the pandemic. So
It truly is.
I believe that we will recover. I always say that Sri Lanka is a very resilient country. The people just know how to get up and keep it moving. And that's something that I pride myself in, being Sri Lankan, that we have that instinctively in our blood. And so, like yourself, I'm very positive about the fact that we will rise, so to speak. And it will be okay. I think in a very short while, relatively speaking, I think we'll recover. Tell me, the season of isolation. This is more personal, this question. During that season of curfew and not being able to wander around and do what you normally do, how was that 2-month period for you personally, in terms of resetting life in general? How was that for you? Did you find yourself reassessing your value systems and relationships, and what was it like for you?
Exactly. See, now before this whole pandemic and all that, people were appreciating a lot of this work from home and then not having adequate time to spend with the family and all that. So this, I think, gave both of us a different perspective to life and what we value and what we don't value. So I believe that for many of the so-called professional career-oriented people, so the perspective would have changed, and their value system would have changed by now. Because see, the connections that we used to value before this, and the connections we used to ignore before this, families, children, probably parents, probably relatives. Now, when you are in office, you tend to ignore a call from a relative, but you take a call from an unknown number, or probably even somebody who's far away, but calling for some official reason. But the priorities and their whole perspective to life would have changed. Like one of these, I think, gurus in India had said, like. Yeah, the COVID exactly showed us. Now we used to, I think we used to think of ourselves as the supreme beings on this planet, right? We used to think that we own it and we
Yeah.
control it. We are on the top of the food chain and all that. We thought we are technologically superior. We were trying to go to Mars, things like that. But then this small microorganism, just over a month's period, showed us how small we are, how helpless we are, how technologically under uh, performing we are.
That's so true.
And so this is just one simple thing. So there are so many things nature can do to us. So we are small, so small, right? We got to understand who we are and our place on this planet.
Yeah.
Like he said, actually, like he said, if you are not here, planet would perish, right? Flourish to the extent that it will be a green planet again, like
Wow.
proper planet for living beings.
Yes.
So that aspect, I think for me, that was the most, I think the most valuable message that I took. We probably for a while we came out of it and thinking we got busy with our lifestyles and all that.
Right.
So for me, yeah, we got to spend at home. We got to spend more time with kids, education, contribute. You get to contribute to their education also, right? You go through their books, you attend to their things, their weaknesses,
Yeah.
and probably for kids also depends on the age, not the probably not the teenagers. Uh, for kids also, I think probably one of the best times that they had because they had parents for themselves, they had grandparents for themselves who are living with them.
True.
So they had the most flourishing connections right throughout the day, playing all that they would have had. It would have perfectly added psychological value for them.
Mm.
And having said that, work from home is also shown that it could be at a time it could be a killer because there's no end to it. There's really no end to it, right? I mean, when you come to office, when you at least on the road, you're free of that stress.
Sure.
But then
Yeah.
here is not the case, but also depends on the industry that you're in. But this is more or less valid for IT industry because whoever into technological development kind of thing,
It's 24/7.
it's 24/7 for them. And see, I got a few of my staff to come and occasionally monitor the servers and all that. So they have to come and go. But then apart from that, everyone work from home. Our entire unit work from home. Nothing of our work in terms of ICT department work got delayed or anything like that. So we ensured everything goes smooth, all that. So yeah,
Wonderful.
I don't know whether I answered your question in a.
You well, and I think your general perspective, just looking at you, your general perspective is to be positive and to always extract the positive from any situation. And I think for that reason, the position you're in is perfect because you need that optimism to be able to keep going no matter how huge the challenge is. And you just faced a huge one and seem to have made it to the other side with flying colors. So congratulations to you and to your and wish you all the very best. I really sincerely do believe that tourism in Sri Lanka will be up and running with a momentum that's far greater than we've ever experienced before, because I think the world looked at us and saw us for so many reasons. We were on that world map. So the future is bright, as you said earlier. And I wish you all the very best. And maybe I always say in 6 months we can touch base, maybe, and you can tell me just how well things have developed and improved. Is that so? Is that okay?
Sure, sure. No worries.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and good luck to you. We look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thank you very much, and thanks for connecting with me, and all the best to you too.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
All right. Thank you very much.